This week's organizational decision-making topic was focused on group decision-making. Organizations, both for-profit and not-for-profit, make extensive use of group decision-making. It's a mechanism for overcoming the bounded rationality of individual decision makers, put multiple brains together to, we hope, make a better decision, bring more perspective, more experience, more wisdom to the decision process. And then group processes are also used extensively for information sharing in almost all organizations. In our business organizations or our organizations like hospitals, maybe nonprofit, but which run in a very business-like way, we make extensive use of groups. And most managers, practicing managers, if you talk to them about their work, you invariably come upon the tremendous amount of meetings that they go to. It's just a real feature of managerial work. People spend a great deal of time in meetings, and there's constantly complaints about how inefficient meetings are, how much of a waste of time that they are, and that at the same time, we think they're extremely important for making informed, good decisions and also for information exchange. One of the issues that we face in the use of groups in organizations is a challenge of groupthink. And groupthink is, very likely to occur when people have perhaps hidden agendas, or they have very specific things that they want to achieve related directly to their position versus a group outcome. And where you also have mixed status, where there's potential for status domination, which exactly describes most organizational settings. Our groups represent a division of labor, which are many different perspectives on problems and desired solutions. And then we also have the mixed status of people with varying levels of the hierarchy who are blended together. And in that mixed status, we see distortions in communication. The biggest distortion of which is people just don't say anything, is self-censoring that occurs. And so in organizations and business-like organizations, we actually have exactly the kind of circumstances in which we're going to see groupthink. And organizations very much depend on good leadership to run good processes. And as we discussed in class, the effective running of group decision making is actually one of the things that almost everybody can accomplish through at the very beginning of their career. It's an opportunity to exercise leadership, even if your authority level is low. If you're in charge of running a meeting, people will both appreciate you, and you also are going to get the most that you need out of meetings by being an effective leader. So we talked about groups being an effective mechanism for sharing expertise. One of the things that's extremely important are the conformity pressures that occur in this groupthink environment. And we said one of the most useful things to do, and actually the easiest thing to do as a person who is in charge of a meeting and we want the sharing of the expertise, is to not say much. And it's very much counter to most people's impulse in a meeting. They want to run the meeting. But if you really want information sharing to occur, you want to hear people out, you want their input on a decision, the best thing you can do as the leader of the meeting is invite conversation, facilitate conversation, and be among the last to speak, not the first to speak. The other thing that is challenging in group settings is we have this assumption that participation is going to generate commitment. It's not a sure thing. And in fact, we know from research on groups that people actually experience a diffusion of responsibility in the group. There's an external, if in an attribution sense, that they can attribute the decision to. It's the group, it's not their decision. And so if we're hoping to have implementation and follow-up commitment to the group decision, it's dependent on the leader really working to increase the sense of volition, to drive the commitment. We have the perfect environment for a commitment. It's public. We have an opportunity to get people to make irreversible statements, which are their promises to follow through, accountability to other people. But too often groups just kind of abandon ship, and there is no real follow through plan. It's another place where a leader can make a really high impact, is just making sure that volition's there, the publicness that's going to generate the commitment to implementation. The other thing we talked about is understanding that groups and organizations are used for lots of different purposes. Probably the most common group in organizations is simply information sharing, which also we talked about should include informal groups. An awful lot of, we don't think of our lunch gatherings as meetings, but they are a type of meeting, and especially in a work environment, people talk shop. They talk about courses of action. They're sharing information. So most common kind of meeting we're going to have the information sharing in a formal setting. Um, Same kind of situation. We're still subject to information censoring, status domination. Even if we're not making a decision, there's a potential for the social structure to really mess up our objective for the meeting. And it's very important that if we're in charge of the meeting, if we have a facilitation role, that we really pay attention to what is the process unfolding before us, who's talking, in what direction questions are going, answers are given, is a really useful thing to start to become attentive to. And I suggested in the lecture even doing something like charting and mapping meetings for a while to start to increase your capacity to kind of see, okay, who's actually participated, who's quiet. Very often the person saying nothing is important information for you to know, and you may not notice it unless you formally chart it. You want to become attentive and attuned to this. On the further readings, the Sunstein and Hasty book is a very good book. It's just fairly recently out. We read an article by them as part of the readings for this week, and it's something I'm actually considering adopting for the class in place of Levy. I mean, Levy's a good book. It's thorough. It goes over every single topic, but I would really like to have something that's a little more focused on how we're talking about groups, and this is an excellent book. The Robert Kennedy 13 Days, a memoir of the Cuban Missile Crisis, kind of takes through the whole group processes. They mention and talk about what they learned from the Bay of Pigs invasion, which was a catastrophe, and how they did things different in the Cuban Missile Crisis. So very great information on a group and how it struggled with really significant decisions. Apollo 13 is a movie, and it has got one of the greatest sequences of group brainstorming and group problem solving I think ever depicted in the movies. On that flight, they had a major catastrophe. It blew out some systems, and they had to come up with a patched together system to save the astronaut's life. And it has a depiction of a bunch of engineers gathered in a room. They come in with a garbage can and just dump this big pile of everything that's on board the capsule that could possibly be used to save the lives of the astronauts. And they have to, in real time, engineer and come up with a solution. They're using plastic covers off of binders. Duct tape comes to play a prominent role, and it actually is from that movie that duct tape kind of entered the common language when we talk about duct tape as a solution to everything. And so it's just a great depiction of that. And then, as I posted online, if you didn't have a chance, if you've never seen it, looking at the IDEO video about group brainstorming and how the power of groups to make decisions is another great illustration. And in some ways, it's much more explicit about what they're doing, so you have a better opportunity to see exactly how they manage their group to generate ideas and ideation in their group. Definitely no groupthink in what they're doing, and I think it's a useful thing to see, to really see what the ideal is that we're striving for. And you can see the attention that they give to process, which is, again, what I advise and what is advised for leaders is to really think about, understand, and be good at the process side of group leadership to get the results that you want.